Picture a quiet dawn at a windswept racetrack. Mechanics wipe down fenders while drivers adjust their gloves. In one lane sits a sleek fiberglass coupe painted a deep metallic blue. The car is a Chevrolet Corvette from the mid-1960s. It carries the weight of a national identity on its long nose and the hopes of an engineer who dreams of beating the Europeans at their own game. In the other lane looms an aluminum-bodied roadster, raw and purposeful, its exhaust pipes snaking out from the sides like the coils of a serpent. This machine is a Shelby Cobra, a British sports car with an American heart transplanted into its chest. The crowd gathers with anticipation because they have heard the stories. Just a few seasons earlier, the Cobra humiliated the Corvette at road courses and drag strips across America. The little roadster with a Ford V8 under its hood seemed unstoppable, a lightweight champion that could outrun and outhandle the heavier American sports car. The man behind the Cobra, a brash former chicken farmer named Carroll Shelby, even boasted that General Motors' best engineers were building toys compared to his snarling snakes. Yet now, in the summer of 1965, the tables might be turning. The Corvette is no longer the same car it was 2 years earlier. It has been transformed by the addition of something entirely new, something monstrous, something that makes it both formidable and controversial at the same time. That something is the Mark IV big block V8 known internally as the L78. To appreciate why this moment matters, we need to travel back a few years. In the early 1960s, the Corvette was America's only true sports car. It was a beautiful machine with a fiberglass body that looked like nothing else on the road. Under the hood beat a small block V8 engine, usually displacing 327 cubic inches and producing around 300 horsepower. That power fed through a 4-speed gearbox to independent rear suspension, a feature borrowed from European racers. Yet as refined as the Corvette was, it was heavy. With a curb weight creeping over 3,000 pounds, the Corvette had a power-to-weight ratio of roughly 10 pounds per horsepower. That might sound impressive, but it was no match for the upstart that arrived in 1962. Carroll Shelby was a retired race driver with a heart condition and a mind for mischief. He had won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in a British Aston Martin and then returned to America determined to build a world-beating sports car of his own. He took a tiny British roadster called the AC Ace, stuffed a Ford small block V8 into its nose, and called the result the Shelby Cobra. The first Cobra used a 289 cubic inch engine rated at 271 horsepower. But here was the magic. The Cobra weighed just about 2,100 pounds. That meant its power-to-weight ratio was roughly 7 pounds per horsepower, dramatically better than the Corvette's. The Cobra's primitive leaf spring suspension and Spartan interior did not matter on the track. With so little mass to move, the Cobra could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.5 seconds and run the quarter mile in under 14 seconds. Road and Track magazine put the Cobra and the small block Corvette head to head and found that the Cobra was a full second quicker in the quarter mile and 10 miles per hour faster at the line. The Cobra could reach about 135 miles per hour despite its small engine, because its frontal area was smaller and its drag lower than the Corvette's. It even had disc brakes on all 4 wheels, giving it superior stopping power. The Corvette's drums faded after a few hard laps. On paper and on track, the Cobra embarrassed the Corvette. Shelby reveled in the rivalry. He called the Corvette a fat pig and boasted that his Cobras would run circles around Duntov's toys. He told reporters that he could build cars for men while General Motors built cars for boys. Each victory only fueled his arrogance. Meanwhile, inside General Motors, engineer Zora Arcus Duntov seethed. Duntov was a Belgian-born hot rodder who had fled war-torn Europe and found his calling at Chevrolet. He believed that the Corvette could be a world-class sports car. He championed disc brakes, independent rear suspension, and fuel injection. But corporate politics kept him from turning the Corvette into a full race car. General Motors had signed an agreement in 1957 promising not to participate in automobile racing. That meant Duntov could not build a factory-backed race car to take on the Cobra. Instead, he worked in secret to develop a weapon he called the Grand Sport. The Grand Sport used a special lightweight chassis with thin fiberglass body panels. It weighed about 2,000 pounds, on par with the Cobra. Under the hood sat a 377 cubic inch small block engine with experimental cylinder heads. It produced about 485 horsepower and 435 pound-feet of torque, extraordinary numbers for the time. Duntov built 5 of these cars and secretly shipped them to private teams. At the Nassau Speed Week in 1964, the Grand Sports ran alongside the Cobras. They were about 10 seconds per lap quicker than Shelby's cars, their screaming engines drowning out the Cobra's low burble. The Grand Sports won handily. Shelby fumed. Yet when General Motors executives found out, they pulled the plug. Duntov was ordered to stop his racing program, and the 5 Grand Sports were sold off. Shelby was relieved to see his nemesis hamstrung by corporate rules. With the Grand Sport project dead, Duntov turned to the production Corvette. He knew the small block could not match the Cobra's power-to-weight ratio. He needed a new engine, something with the torque to overcome the Corvette's extra weight. Fortunately, the engineers at Chevrolet were already developing a new family of engines. The Mark IV big block was conceived to power full-size sedans, but Duntov saw its potential for his sports car. The engine used canted valves arranged at odd angles, creating a combustion chamber that looked like a porcupine, hence the nickname Porcupine Heads. This design allowed larger valves and better airflow than the small block. The engine also had a cross-drilled forged steel crankshaft, 4-bolt main bearing caps for strength, and a high-lift, long-duration camshaft. The L78 version displaced 396 cubic inches and had 11:1 compression. It breathed through a single Holley 4-barrel carburetor that could flow 780 cubic feet per minute. The factory rated it at 425 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute and 415 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 revolutions per minute. Those numbers eclipsed anything in the Corvette lineup so far. Duntov's team reinforced the chassis, added a heavy-duty clutch, and installed a bigger radiator to cope with the heat. They also introduced 4-wheel disc brakes as standard equipment, with 4 piston calipers and cooling fins. A dual master cylinder with separate reservoirs enhanced safety. The new brakes offered fade-free stopping that could finally match the power under the hood. Reviewers wrote that pressing the pedal felt like throwing an anchor. The heavy coupe could slow from speeds that would have been frightening with drums. On twisting roads, the stoppers inspired confidence, letting drivers brake later and carry speed into corners. Combined with the L78's broad torque, the disc brakes turned the Corvette from a straight-line bruiser into a complete sports car. There was one catch: the big block added mass. The engine weighed about 150 pounds more than the small block. This shifted the Corvette's weight distribution from an even 50-50 split to 51% over the front axle and 49% over the rear. To clear the massive engine, the engineers designed a bulging hood with a raised dome and a black stripe down the center. Functional side vents behind the front wheels helped extract hot air. The car looked more aggressive than ever, but critics whispered that it looked overweight. Hot rodders nicknamed it the fiberglass porcupine because of its canted valves and the way the hood spike made it look like a creature bristling with quills. Some worried that the added weight would ruin the Corvette's handling, especially on tight road courses. Others did not care because all they wanted was straight-line speed. When the L78 Corvette hit showrooms in the spring of 1965, it cost just under $5,000. The big block option cost about $293. The price buyers received 50 additional horsepower over the top small block fuel-injected engine, which cost over $538. The numbers were irresistible. Only 2,157 L78 Corvettes were built before the end of the model year, but they became instant legends. On paper, the L78 Corvette matched the Cobra's straight-line performance. Independent tests showed that the big block Corvette could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 5.7 seconds and cover the quarter mile in roughly 14.1 seconds at over 103 miles per hour. That was only a few tenths slower than the 289 Cobra, which still had a slight weight advantage. The Corvette's top speed approached 133 miles per hour. More importantly, the new disc brakes allowed it to stop from 100 miles per hour in less than 300 feet with no fade. Inside, the Corvette remained civilized. It offered carpeting, roll-up windows, a telescoping steering column, and a removable roof panel. The Cobra, by contrast, was Spartan. Its aluminum body panels were hand-riveted, and its interior was bare metal and leather. Driving a Cobra on the street meant enduring heat, noise, and a lack of weather protection. The Corvette could be a comfortable daily driver while still delivering blistering performance at the drag strip. Many drivers who could not live with the Cobra's compromises chose the big block Corvette instead. Nevertheless, the rivalry between Shelby and Duntov raged on. Shelby did not take the big block Corvette as a defeat. He simply raised the stakes. Ford had grown weary of losing to Ferrari at Le Mans and wanted a powerful engine for its racing programs. Shelby convinced the company to supply him with the 7-liter FE big block used in full-size Galaxies. He redesigned the Cobra's chassis with thicker tube frame rails, coil spring suspension, and flared fenders to accommodate wider tires. The resulting car, known as the 427 Cobra, looked similar to the earlier version but was an entirely different beast. The standard street version produced about 410 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. The competition version pumped out 485 horsepower. Because the car still weighed only around 2,350 pounds, its power-to-weight ratio dipped below 5 pounds per horsepower. It could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4.2 seconds and run the quarter mile in the low 12-second range at around 125 miles per hour. Its top speed approached 165 miles per hour. It was violent, loud, and nearly unmanageable. Reviewers described it as a sledgehammer. Shelby joked that buyers of the 427 Cobra should sign a waiver acknowledging the risk of death. The car quickly earned a fearsome reputation on the street and the track. When a 427 Cobra lined up against a big block Corvette, the outcome was seldom in doubt. The Cobra launched harder, reached the end of the quarter mile first, and looked back at the heavy Corvette like a predator watching its prey. Yet numbers tell only part of the story. Behind the horsepower wars were the personalities of two men who refused to accept defeat. Carroll Shelby was a natural showman. He loved the press and famously wore his trademark cowboy hat while smoking cigars. He assembled a team of hot rodders and war veterans in a small garage at Los Angeles International Airport and turned out Cobras with the help of British craftsmen. He sold the cars through a network of enthusiastic dealers and even partnered with Hertz to offer high-performance rentals. When he heard about the big block Corvette, he laughed. He called it fat and slow. He told reporters that the Corvette might be powerful, but it would never beat a Cobra on the track. To prove his point, he he scheduled exhibition races and drag strip showdowns. In many of these events, the 427 Cobra won convincingly. But Shelby also understood that the Corvette appealed to a different kind of buyer. The Corvette offered a level of refinement that the Cobra never could. It had power windows, a radio, and a heater. It could be driven across the country without causing hearing loss. Shelby's car was a weapon. The Corvette was a grand touring car that could double as a weapon when provoked. Zora Arkus Duntov was equally determined, though more reserved. He believed that technology should be accessible to ordinary drivers. He fought for aluminum heads, fuel injection, and disc brakes when others doubted the need. He drove Corvettes at the Pikes Peak hill climb and at the Florida beach to prove their durability. When Shelby's Cobras began winning races, Duntov responded with the Grand Sport. When corporate rules killed that program, he introduced the big block engine to maintain the Corvette's performance credibility. He did not see the big block as a crude sledgehammer. Instead, he saw it as a sophisticated piece of engineering that applied aerospace ideas to road cars. The canted valves and porcupine heads allowed high volumetric efficiency. The cross-drilled crankshaft improved lubrication. The four-wheel disc brakes gave drivers confidence. Duntov also knew that power alone was not enough. He insisted on balancing the Corvette's handling with wide tires, improved suspension geometry, and stronger frames. Over time, his approach would lay the foundation for future generations of Corvettes that combined raw power with finesse. The L-78 Corvette's impact went beyond the drag strip. It marked the beginning of an arms race between Detroit car makers. Chevrolet soon replaced the 396 with a 427 cubic inch big block that produced 425 and even 435 horsepower. Ford responded not just with the 427 Cobra, but also with the 428 cubic inch police interceptor in the Shelby Mustang GT500. Plymouth and Dodge introduced their own big block streetcars with engines like the 426 Hemi and the 446 Pack. Horsepower figures climbed rapidly. Drag strips across America filled with muscle cars, turning ever faster times. A few years later, insurance companies, emissions rules, and safety regulations would bring the era to an end. But in 1965, the big block Corvette lit the fuse. Among enthusiasts, debates still rage about whether the big block Corvette or the Cobra was the better car. Purists adore the Cobra's simplicity and elemental feel. They point to its featherweight body, its direct steering, and the way its side pipes roar. They cite its superior performance numbers and its racing pedigree. They quote Carroll Shelby's famous line that with enough power, anything will run. They laugh at the Corvette's cushy interior and its weight. Corvette fans counter with their own arguments. They note that the big block engine was more reliable than the overheating Cobras. They celebrate the Corvette's ability to perform on track and then drive home in comfort. They recall that the Corvette Grand Sports beat the Cobras when allowed to compete without corporate handcuffs. And they remind everyone that the big block Corvette cost far less than the Cobra while offering similar straight-line speed. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. Each car represents a different philosophy. The Cobra is a blunt instrument that sacrifices comfort for speed. The big block Corvette is a more balanced machine that blends power, style, and usability. Together, they pushed each other to greater heights. One of the ironies of the story is that the big block Corvette gave birth to the Cobra that ultimately eclipsed it. If Chevrolet had not introduced the L-78, Ford might not have approved the 427 engine for Shelby. The Cobra's Escalation was a direct response to the Corvette's challenge. In that sense, the Corvette not only chased the Cobra, it created its own nemesis. Similarly, the end of the Grand Sport program ensured that the Corvette would fight the Cobra on unequal terms. Had General Motors allowed Duntov to continue his lightweight project, the outcome of the rivalry might have been different. The Grand Sports showed that a light Corvette with a powerful engine could dominate the Cobras. Yet corporate decisions and marketing priorities favored a big block streetcar instead. The result was a different kind of legend. Today, both cars command astronomical prices at auction. Original L78 Corvettes, especially those with side exhaust and special colors, are prized by collectors. Original 427 Cobras routinely sell for millions. The myth of the rivalry adds to their value. Television shows and magazines still revisit the story, pitting replicas against each other at modern tracks. Younger enthusiasts who never lived through the 60s still argue about who laughed last. Some say Shelby was right to call the Corvette fat. Others say he underestimated the big block and that the Corvette forced him to build a monstrous car that was barely street legal. In the end, maybe it does not matter who won. What matters is that two visionaries refused to accept mediocrity, and in doing so elevated the entire industry. As the sun sets at our imaginary racetrack, the two cars fire up their engines. The Corvette's big block rumbles like distant thunder, its idle shaking the ground. The Cobra's V8 barks sharply, a metallic snarl that echoes off the concrete. The drivers glance at each other, not with anger, but with mutual respect. They know that each machine represents countless hours of toil, late nights, and personal sacrifices. They know that each machine pushed the other to evolve. When the flag drops, the two cars launch forward, tires squealing. For a moment they are side by side, then the Cobra inches ahead. The big block Corvette roars in pursuit, its fiberglass body straining against the air. The crowd cheers, not caring who wins. They cheer because they are witnessing the embodiment of American ingenuity and stubbornness. They cheer because rivalries like this make cars more than just transportation. They make them stories, legends, and dreams. Years later, Carroll Shelby would still talk about the day he saw the first big block Corvette. He would recall laughing at the bulging hood and the weight distribution figures. He would still boast that no fat Corvette could ever beat his snake. Yet sometimes, when the cameras were off and he was sipping bourbon with old friends, he would admit that Zora Arkus Duntov gave him sleepless nights. He would confess that the big block Corvette forced him to build the 427 Cobra, a car that he sometimes feared. Duntov, for his part, rarely spoke ill of Shelby. He respected the Texan's resourcefulness and showmanship. He even admired the Cobra's performance. In his later years, he said that competition was a gift because it forced you to do your best work. The rivalry between the Corvette and the Cobra, between Duntov and Shelby, was a gift to car lovers. It gave us engines with porcupine heads, aluminum bodies with side pipes, disc brakes and bulging hoods. It gave us stories to tell on quiet nights when the smell of gasoline still lingers in the air. And it reminds us that sometimes being called fat is just another way of saying you are too big for your rivals to ignore.